So, lastly, we have our menstrual phase, and this is our inner winter. I also call it my moontime because it just reminds me that I am so interconnected with the celestial bodies that revolve around me. Every morning I'm reminded that the circadian rhythm runs my life. But every time I bleed, I remind myself of the inseparable connection I have to the moon. I've learned not to dread my bleed. I actually really love to honor my bleed. It's a very sacred time for me. I actually find that my bleed is a really big time of relief, of letting go. And I find oftentimes in my luteal phase, there's a buildup of energy. And there's just this building of energy that's been there and been churning over the last month. And then with my bleed, I can release it. And there's a big just shedding, releasing, letting go, purifying energy there. I also often prompt women in my container about which phase of their cycle they feel most like themselves. And this is more a question just to get you to think about the different kinds of versions of yourself that you show up as. And a lot of women really dread their bleed. And I frame it like this. So if you started bleeding when you were 12 and you'll stop bleeding when you're 55 and you bleed an average of 5 days, you'll be bleeding for 7.5 years of your life. And so what kind of relationship have you cultivated with that side of yourself? Because 7.5 years is no small fucking feat. And so you better learn to love that woman, that bleeding, beautiful, feminine woman, and tap into her. And really, like, my bleed time is a time to tap into my creative energy, my creative potential, my dark feminine. It's really a time for feminine energy. And so honor it. I want to be a little bit more inwards, a little bit more antisocial. I don't normally want to interact with men that much. My partner cooks for me while I'm bleeding, so I love that. I love him for that. And he just nurtures and tends to me and cares for me, and that feels really good. Feels like a really deep time of self-care. And it's just beautiful, just built into our body, this sacred pause. And it's kind of this limbo state where it's not really progesterone dominant or estrogen dominant. It's just not dominant in anything. All of our hormones are just low. So I've actually found that fasting during my bleed is the best time for me. It doesn't affect my hormones, it doesn't affect my cycle. Um, and yeah, my hormones are already low. So the extra cortisol that comes from fasting doesn't seem to affect anything. Whereas I would avoid it during my luteal phase because we're more susceptible to stress. In terms of exercise, my body just doesn't want to. You're going through a big detox. And so it's still good to move and like help the energy along and do some yin yoga and go for a walk. But the body's going through this big detoxification process. So it's already working overtime. So don't put any more pressure on the body than it needs to. And that's part of the reason why I like fasting during that time. It's like the body's detoxing already, so help it. Oftentimes, if we're struggling with cramps, chocolate is one of the greatest sources of magnesium out there, and magnesium is a muscle relaxant. It's the calming mineral, so I recommend, it's like the nature is always speaking to you, right? Typically, if herbs are red raspberry leaf is really good for your bleed. Roses are really good for your bleed. Cranberries, vitamin C, rose hips are really good for your bleed. And then just like nourishing, warming food, you think of it as your inner winter. You want to just be tended to. You want to nurture yourself. And so find your own way of honoring this time. It's a beautiful time. And really come into relation with that side of yourself and don't dread it every month.